Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our practice edition where we talk about improvements we made through the week and apply lean principles to them. I'm Uriel Eisen.
And I am Devin Bedoni.
Got a quote.
The game of science is, in principle, without end. He who decides one day that scientific statements do not call for any further test and that they can be regarded as finally verified retires from the game.
Nice.
I feel like this is key on the...
From Karl Popper.
Yeah, sorry. The ongoing improvement kata obsession.
Yeah.
Is just test, basically.
Right.
And don't assume. Or assume what you're doing is wrong and bad and continue to test your theories.
Yeah.
Seems so key.
It is key. It is also fun and exciting and also exhausting sometimes.
Oh my God, it's so tiring.
Yeah. I was doing more, I should say Alicia was doing more modeling of the spreadsheet for improvements and ROI and stuff. Mm-hmm. We've been sort of playing with it a bit more. It is very clear why more people don't do it, which is that it is all downside for the first, depending on your ratio, but the first 2 months easily.
Yeah. A
lot of the payoff financially, again, depending on your numbers, are around a year, theoretically. Production payoff, break-even point is anywhere from 2 to 6 months.
Even for small things.
There's a lot of assumptions baked into this model.
Right.
So it really depends. Yeah. We've had huge successes and we've had things that are 100% wasted time, wasted money, right? So you kind of are guessing at what your averages are unless you want to log everything and go on straight data.
Yeah.
But they do match up to some anecdotal evidence I've heard from bigger companies that have gone lean and what their ROI was and what their break-even points are.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is hard and it is tiring and it you need constant. I've heard this Ryan at Seating Matters said this in an interview and I really liked it. He was basically you need someone to be very excited about it because it's hard. There's just no two ways about it. Yeah. Also fun though. But it's a constant process and endless.
I feel if you are not the owner, and you're getting paid to do this, either way, I would be so game.
Well, evidently we both would be, right?
I guess we do it, even though it's all downside for us initially.
Yeah, not now though. Now it's huge upsides
starting to pay off.
Yeah,
probably right.
Oh yeah. I mean, we can take we just took a short last minute order for 100 pieces, and we just turned it around in I don't know. I forget how many hours. Not many hours.
Oh, hours, not days.
That's fantastic. It was over 2 days. To be fair, it was over 2 days because we did have to paint because we are, as they say, just in time. So it was also interesting to see the downsides of that. When someone's hey, can I have 1,000 today? Yeah. You're no, you cannot. So there's downsides for sure. But over one night, we painted late in the afternoon. It was ready the next morning and we finished it up and shipped it out.
That's cool.
And it didn't mess us up in a major way.
Yeah.
So
that's very exciting.
Launch us off with some improvements.
Sure. Yeah. Went ham this last week, apparently. Or maybe I just wrote them down. Small one. Added a paper towel holder to our bandsaw.
Oh, nice. So it can wipe its hands off?
Yeah.
Excellent.
No, I don't know why it took us so long. You're always handling wet stock at the bandsaw. And I personally don't love having coolant covered hands.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know why it took years. There's no convenient place to put it. That's why it took a long time. But then we did it in 1 minute. Maybe 5 minutes.
That's awesome.
And
nice.
then it leads right into the next one, which is I then ordered magnetic paper towel holders for all the machines, including the bandsaw, and got rid of the jank one that I put together in 5 minutes. Yeah.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Can I ask why you're always touching wet stock?
Yeah, because we haven't had time to build an outfeed table that drains.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it has a short outfeed table, probably 18 inches.
I feel like that outfeed table would reduce a huge amount of waste in your shop.
Right,
Because
there's a larger one.
Well, yeah, isn't there like a lot of walking back and forth to make sure stuff doesn't
fall off? And
yeah,
we have a bucket to catch, but it's kind of makes a mess when they actually fall in there. And we've had occasionally like lost. There's been issues where it's like we thought we made all the parts, no one checked the counter,
right?
Couple blanks were at the bottom of the bucket, kind of a thing. It's definitely a better outfeed scenario is moving its way up the list in terms of priorities.
Yeah, but that's a bigger project than just like, hey, let's do this in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Which I feel like those things often, for me anyway, slide a bit more than they should, because I feel like often they're more impactful than the quick ones.
Yep.
It's true. I don't know how to balance that in our shop.
Yeah. Where we are now, like the new layout, it's actually better than it used to be because it's visible from all of the machines.
Right.
And it's actually probably a shorter walk, even though the new shop is much bigger.
Yeah.
So it's a little easier to keep an eye on, but it's still.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very obvious now when the ping pong balls go flying.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's see. So I have Andrew at Henry Holsters talked about applying continuous improvement to their website, which I really liked.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. I realized I was getting a lot of messages asking 2 questions essentially. And so I just jumped on there and wrote them into the description to answer those questions on the product. It's a good reminder. I don't go on our website very much, and Andrew was sort of saying the same, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't go on your own website. And so, but that is where the customer experiences your brand and your business.
Yep.
And it is all waste and all annoying and all bad when someone has a question and then has to, like, instead of just buying the thing, they have to message you, and then you have to message them back, and then they have to see that message and then go back to your website if they still are interested. And so it's a lot of waste and a lot of added friction. So just getting on there, and it took me probably 5 minutes to make the corrections.
Yeah.
Did it to all the products that needed it. Big win.
Nice. Right on.
And free, except for time.
Yeah.
And a $3,000 laptop.
Except that minor detail. I updated our generic Lathe CAM template to automatically size the softjaw pocket to the stock size that we're using.
Oh, cool.
Again, one of these things take probably literally 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So silly not to do it right off the bat. But yeah, that's small thing.
Yeah. And there's always going to be those things. And so really it's better to have a mechanism for continuous improvement rather than a better method of building things to begin with.
Yeah. And I've been noticing trying to put this into a broader principle, like in CAM programming, or it's like a setup versus runtime concept. With lathe parts, the actual programming is often very quick. Okay. The setup is kind of the same as you would have to do for a mill part often. So like reducing that down is like, the setup is a bigger percentage of the total time.
Gotcha.
So I've just been finding like every little thing I can do to streamline lathe programming it's really beneficial for everything, but it's like a bigger chunk of the total.
Interesting.
So it's been cool to be like, okay, if I really streamline this thing, I can like program a lathe part in like 10 minutes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. If it's not a crazy complicated part.
Yeah.
So that was, small thing, helpful.
Interesting. Yeah. So I guess, what waste is that eliminating?
Rework.
Yeah. Because you're basically adjusting a thing over and over that could just not be adjusted.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't love wasted human potential. I mean, it's a good waste to have, but all of them are wasted human potential when you have a person doing the thing in a funny way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Nice. I finally, I use gloves when I'm painting.
Yeah.
And the box of gloves was always like randomly floating around.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
Always somewhere not great. So I finally remembered, like I kept remembering as I was running out the door that I wanted to 3D print a holder, because they're like $20 online, which is cheap in one way, but in another way you're like, that's a 20
hold a box,
I don't want to spend $20 when I have a 3D printer.
Uh-huh.
So I just downloaded a model off of Thingiverse, and like last night before I left, I just printed it overnight. I mean, it was like an hour and a half print, but there was nothing queued up on the 3D printer. So now it's a spot.
Does it screw down to the table so it can't now be a box on a holder that wanders around?
Oh, it's screwed to the wall. Yeah.
Nice.
It's up on the wall. I think I want to redesign it or print a second one so that a backup box is also there. But this is a far cry from what I had before.
Yeah, you just have two next to each other.
Yeah, that's the other option.
Yeah.
There's a number of things I don't like about this, but again, like optimizing that is such a ridiculous thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't know how to think about that. It's really challenging. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
It'll be the thing that you do in 2 years when you've dealt with everything else in the shop and you loop back and you're like, well, this little thing's annoying me now.
I guess the part that I can't quite decide about is like when you look at companies that are, I think, doing this very well, this being like lean continuous improvement stuff, they spend what looks to be an inordinate amount of time building stuff in-house. Yeah. And we've had this conversation a few times. Yeah. And I don't feel like I have a gut like barometer for what is sensible in terms of like in-house versus out versus like how much time should I be spending on optimizing this one tiny thing anyway. I will say the more I think about it, the more I realize the value of doing things in-house, even if they're the same price as what you'll buy in the end by the time you have people, because you aren't actually spending... You're not spending your profits. You're spending your company's time, which, like, you have to make money on things you sell to then buy something from outside. I don't know. There's often spare bandwidth in a company.
Yeah, and you're also investing in organizational learning.
Yeah, and you often build a thing that's better.
Yeah.
The more I've done this, the more disappointed I am by equipment we buy. It's just like... It's not optimized for the right things for us anyway. Yeah. And then often just really like it doesn't feel like anyone there. Like they're kind of like, well, people are buying it, so we're just going to leave it as is. Yeah. There's so many opportunities. The main one is our sandblasting cabinet. It's just horrendous. I mean, it works. Like that's the thing, right? It sprays sand and anyway, it's
Yeah. Let's see. I updated our generic mill cam template to use the G54.2 probing. Because I was finding, like, it's silly, but the way the numbering nomenclature works, I was having to, like
count on your fingers or something?
I would be like, is that right? And then I would, like, test post it to be like, did that come out correctly the way it's supposed to go? And I was like, silly that I'm redoing this every time. And it was keeping me from using it. So then I just built in some operations into the template that have it preset. And with descriptions based on how they're going to output code for probing.
So that you can verify that it's correct, or what are the descriptions for?
So I don't have to do any kind of setup.
Oh, descriptions. So when you're at the machine, you know how to set it up?
No, sorry. In the CAM template, it says like this, I named the operation like probing on G54 to write to G54.2 P1.
I see. Gotcha.
And then it's just ready to go. And I can go in and select faces and stuff like that, but I don't have to do any of the like pre-setup anymore.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Again, silly rework.
Yeah, and just to broaden that out a little bit, I feel like there is often in software a lack, because it's hard to change, there is a lack of improvement, but we spend so much time... I don't know. Anytime I'm like copying text from, like I did a lot of this doing my taxes, you're copying numbers from this spreadsheet to that spreadsheet and you're like, this is dumb. Yeah. Like this is all dumb.
I'm doing a lot of that right now with all of our setups too. And I'm just like understanding that it's a necessary evil for us to learn. Yeah. But we're going to take a sword to that at some point.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, I really want to get a little better. And by a little better, I mean a lot better at programming. 'Cause all this stuff is sort of behind a pretty steep learning curve of
not
just like
CAM programming, but actual computer programming.
Like get this thing to talk to that thing
right
through some weird workaround that does work.
Yeah.
Saves so much time.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's see. So, I mean, I don't know if this counts. It doesn't count. I made a lot of improvements to our, I feel like I've been really busy with product development.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that counts because it's a core business functionality and it's not improving how we do it. Anyway, I have been thinking a lot about how we do product development, and I am trying to intentionally carry more concepts forward at every stage rather than like at every stage trying to pick a winner. Just sort of being like, here's 7 ways we can do this thing. The next temptation is to be like, which is the best, instead of be like, great, let's refine all 7 a little bit. And then I find, and this is not just me, like all the literature sort of agrees with this, is like you often end up pulling ideas from one into the other, and that resolves a problem that like concept A had, and B is worse but has one element that's really useful. And so I'm hoping to reduce the amount of taking one idea forward and then having to loop the whole thing back because it fails for an unexpected reason, where you're like, oh, that causes this issue. Okay, back to square one. Let's see, what other concepts do I have? So it's, anyway, trying to become a little bit more systematic about product development. I think it's tempting to sort of give it over to the realm of like inspiration and art, and you just have to like, but I don't think that's, I think that is true to an extent.
Sure.
But probably like people self-report probably like 85% of it is inspiration, and it's probably more like 15 or less.
Or even like art, like it's like, well, you still need the canvas and the paint. Like, like you still need the building blocks to make it happen, and the I don't know if that's a reasonable analogy, but
maybe something I've been contemplating with product development, looking like 3D printing is amazing for proving something out, but like you've seen the new product 3D printed and now you've seen it in aluminum, and it is so different that it is problematic to prototype in 3D prints the whole time. So I've been wondering if it makes sense to get like a resin printer potentially. I don't know, like something with better resolution. The thing is, there's so many aspects. It's like the surface finish, it's the stiffness, it's
the feel.
So I was trying to think if there's a way that I can, or the other option is just to commit to making aluminum parts sooner.
Right, like we talked about last week.
Having
a separate lane.
I don't know. Anyway.
I started a program handoff checklist for myself. Very simple thing. Not like, so our setup sheets sort of function as a checklist for communicable information that's not in the program itself.
Okay.
And I started a checklist for myself that is like, before you post code, go over these couple things.
Oh, I like that.
Just basic
like things you often miss, kind of.
Yeah, or not often really. Like they're things that I occasionally miss.
Right, that's harder. I guess.
That make a big difference.
Interesting. Can you give an example?
Like checking that my tool stick out definitions are all correct.
Okay.
Double checking that there's no duplicate tool numbers. I still haven't fixed that post issue. What are some of the other things? I think there's only like 5 things on it right now.
That's cool.
And then the bottom portion of it was going to be a log. So
nice.
People come and talk to me, I can start to just write stuff down and find correlation.
Yes.
There's nothing in there yet.
You're just too good at programming, I guess.
So good. No. We'll see. It's like, I also find that like a lot of these things, like you were saying about some improvements really paying off and some not.
Yeah.
Like some of these things is just throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Right.
And it doesn't, if you find yourself not using it, I've found it's like, especially when it's like a list that you wrote online, there's like 0 wasted time there or effort.
Yeah. And especially 0 waste if you've learned something from it.
Yeah. And usually you learn, oh, that's not a good way for us to log information, or this way of of communicating something doesn't actually function.
Yeah.
We better figure out a different way to do it. So anyway, that was cool. There was an interesting thing in Toyota Kata about how setting a goal that's challenging. What was it exactly? Sorry. It's like if you set out to prove yourself right,
Mm-hmm.
you don't learn anything. All you learn is that what you knew is what you know.
Uh-huh.
If you set out to prove yourself wrong, you always learn something new. It's kind of an interesting take on like how to set your targets and how to like design your experiments and your plan for achieving your goal.
Yeah.
If you start with a plan and a proposed outcome and you're not trying to prove yourself wrong, you just don't learn as much.
Interesting. I like that. So it's sort of like, here's the concept, here's where it might fail, let's see if we can make it fail that way or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. It was kind of going back to the like, don't to set a target condition, don't start with a proposed solution.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Anyway, I should bring the book back and read it instead of just trying to do it from memory.
So another big improvement, it's not yet a big improvement. You were the unwilling participant in this. We've been messing around with building our Kanban into a database.
Yep.
And then having that do our reordering and stuff like that. So we got it to send emails,
yep.
as you know.
Yep.
You got one of those emails. It was poorly formulated. It was incomplete.
Yeah, not just incomplete.
Yeah, but it works.
It does,
which is awesome. And
yes.
so basically the way it works right now.
Again, you found the things that don't work. You're learning.
Yeah.
Because problems are jewels.
Problems are jewels. Amen. One of the things we did after you got that email is take out any external emails from this whole thing before any other weird emails go out.
Uh-huh.
But the cool thing it does is basically as you scan a QR code on the Kanban, it pulls up that row, essentially that entity in the database.
Uh-huh.
Right now, you click the add to cart.
Yeah.
And then depending on the item, we have priorities set in it. So like end of day, end of week.
Oh, cool.
And so then it will aggregate all of those vendors and send a complete list of items that we need from them.
That's rad.
Yeah, and it works, which is awesome. Needs a little,
formatting,
more data, more info on each one and so on. But yeah, I think we should have it actually running quite soon.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's going to be big because we've nearly run out of aluminum a few times because I am not on top of reordering.
Uh-huh.
And Sam doesn't have all the information he needs to reorder. And so it just doesn't make any sense. So this way it just gets added. You know, I'm sure we'll have issues and we'll probably maybe want like an approval if it's over a certain dollar amount, or I don't know. We'll find the things, but honestly, there's very low impact for most of the stuff we order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we're going to do it with the high frequency items that are like super critical first, and then we'll move to the other ones that are.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, it's pretty exciting.
Nice. More CAM stuff. I guess I just wrote this as I did it. I should have compiled, but I updated our generic Lathe template again so that the op2 origins auto position.
Okay.
Based on where I place the chuck jaws, basically.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So instead of having to, again, go in, create a plane, do a sketch, create an origin, which doesn't take that long. But
it takes that long. It takes exactly that long.
Yeah. It's exactly as long as it takes. Yeah. So that one, more rework reduction.
Yeah. And the other thing I would like to point out to anyone who's actually not interested in machining, which I don't know how many listeners there are who don't machine things, but either way, like, I think the cool thing about these, I don't know. I always struggle with, should I write down this tiny little improvement?
Yeah.
But I also feel like a lot of waste in the day is made up of very small things. And so it's almost like learning to A, notice, B, fix, but also C, sort of like celebrate the fact that like you're making these tiny little adjustments, but it also means that you're noticing things that you do every time that are repetitive and that you can totally just fix. And then you're taking the time to fix it, and then it's done forever. Yeah. And that's the kind of stuff that really accumulates.
And I think it's like we're working in systems that are not, I mean, CAM programming is pretty optimized, but compared to many of the systems we engage with on a daily basis, like pretty rudimentary in terms of how we engage. An analogy that just popped in my head was like, if you imagined that like every time you wanted to cook something, if your stove was propane, you had to go turn on the propane tank first, and then you cook, and then you go and have to turn it back off again when you were done. Like, I feel like that's kind of the level of a lot of these improvements. Is like, you might just get used to that. On the other hand, like, since we don't have to do that on a daily basis, the thought of it is like, oh my God, why? Oh God, no.
Right.
You know? And it's these little things that after you've dealt with them, you're like, well, yeah, never want to do that again.
Yeah. And I think this, we're kind of hammering this pretty hard this week, but the like setting a target condition is so useful divorced from a solution. Yeah. Because like one thing that was really impactful to me early on, I remember I was thinking what would happen at if our CNC mill could produce any one part we wanted at any time with the click of a button. Yeah. The way we'd operate the shop would be completely different. Yeah. And then actually like running that complete sort of like idea, thought experiment is actually really useful because it starts to set target conditions. It's like, well, why don't we do it? Why don't we do this process in the way we would if parts could come out in the order, in the quantity we needed at the press of a button? And then you're like, oh, our setup times are really long, or like you start to be able to see, like it starts to give you a lot of clarity about what the problems are. Whereas if it's just like solutions based, you're really coming from a perspective of like being kind of trapped in the perspective of all those little things that you already bake in with all your assumptions and just stuff you've gotten used to. Yeah.
It also really like it's a weird way of thinking. It's taking me, like, we haven't really jumped into this yet, but I've just been kind of trying to get my head in the game for how to apply this kind of thing. And it's really not how we think. But once you start to kind of open up to it, it's wonderfully clarifying. Like, we had a bunch of tool confusion today. And it was more noticeable, I think, because we have a new hire. Today was his first day.
Oh, cool.
And he was shadowing one of my people while they were doing the setup. So it was like, oh, this is a little embarrassing. We can't find our tools. And then he had a really good idea for a way of handling non-standard tools. And so I was riding over here after, and I was like, so how do we handle this as a target condition? And it's like, well, the target condition is really simple. It's that when you look at the machine, you know exactly everything that's in it. And now, obviously, making that a reality is a little bit more complicated. But it's like oddly clarifying.
That is oddly clarifying. What are 10 solutions to that problem?
Yeah, we can achieve that with some work versus just being like, this is a mess.
Interesting.
What are some solutions to this mess?
Right.
It's like, I know what I want here. I want to look at this machine and know every tool that's in it. Some are standard, some are not. It's whatever. The specifics don't really matter.
Right.
That really gives you...
That's cool.
Now I'm like, I want to go in there tomorrow and start chewing on this. Like,
right.
Interesting. It's different. It makes it exciting a little bit instead of just overwhelming too.
Yeah, and I think it was in Toyota Kata that they talked about setting good target conditions, that if they're very easy, they're no fun, and if they're completely impossible, they're also no fun. But you do need that sort of like...
You got to sink your teeth in a bit.
Sort of challenging, that seems difficult, but I bet we can figure it out, that you're like, it's pretty exciting to dig into. Yeah. Speaking of hiring, this is not a hire, but I mean, it's like hourly, part-time kind of whatever. Yeah. But too, I think you mentioned like, why don't you have someone else do your CAD? So I hired someone to do a bunch of CAD stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, someone I've worked with, so it makes it so much easier.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And they're like roughing things in basically, and then you refine. That was kind of what
so far it's been pretty simple tasks. I mean, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But soon we're going to jump into like some production fixtures we need done.
Oh, cool.
And then probably into product development of things that are not hard.
Yeah.
But need to be done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, because I was sort of thinking about like what I need to be spending my time on moving forward. And there's a bunch of products I want to release. A lot of them I think are going to be economically lucrative, or to some, like they'll just be solid like staple products. Like they're nothing revolutionary, but people will like them.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are some that like are completely new that are going to be very hard to get. It's just going to be time consuming to get them working, and they do really useful things, and I think I need to be focused on those.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of thinking like, how do we, like, back to target conditions, like how do we release more products?
Yeah.
Like, well, hire people to do these things. Right. And so, yeah.
Right on. Very small one. We adjusted the positions of our workstations at our S700 machines to mitigate reaching.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, took 10 seconds.
Reaching from where to where?
So when you do a part change, basically, we have our tables park at the right side of the machine. That's kind of standard on the Brothers at the end of a program. Might not be on yours because it's a different size.
I reprogrammed it.
You reprogrammed it.
We fixed it in post, so they go right in front of the door.
Yeah. Well, our doors are offset to the right.
Oh, okay. Well.
Yeah. Anyhow, so my employee was like, "Can we make this go to the middle so that we're not having to reach to where the wrenches are and the next blank?" And I was like, "Yes, except then you risk hitting the tool if it's right in the middle because the tools are lower down. There's not clearance for your hands and stuff."
Oh, right.
And this became a problem because we'd rotated all of our workstations because we now have room for them to be 90 degrees. So instead because they were like biased to be flush with the outside of the machine.
Okay.
We just pulled them over so they're biased with the door when it's at full open.
Oh, nice. So they're back to where they were, but a little different.
They're still a little further away, but rotated 90 degrees.
Oh, gotcha.
So they're better overall orientation.
Nice.
Yeah. Small. Again, 30 seconds.
That's awesome.
Well, probably 3 or 4 minutes with talking it through.
Yeah. That's cool. And again, just to like hammer this point home, but most like that stuff is virtually free, and like noticing that you're reaching and then thinking about it as a solvable problem and then implementing a thing to try is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Okay. Well, I'll bang through some. We have our SOPs tab is broken out with like different categories.
SOPs tab in
our Airtable ERP system. And calling it SOPs tab is kind of like, we're just not changing it because that's what we named it at the beginning, but a lot of it is just information that we need on a somewhat regular or not regular basis that we don't want to go searching for.
Can you give an example?
Like our reseller's permit is an attachment, because sometimes Ariel needs that to set up new accounts.
Gotcha.
Or that's an example of a very not SOP type thing.
Right.
Or more in the SOP.
So this is more like standard tasks and everything you need to achieve them or something?
It's kind of everything that someone would go ask someone else in the shop about or for.
So it's like an FAQ.
It is like an FAQ, yeah. But some of it is also SOPs. So like we have in there, like, this is our standard way to, set up this vise. Or this, like, that's where all these checklists that I'm making live.
Okay.
So I added 2 new categories. One was setup items. So things pertaining to setting up a machine.
Okay.
Because before we just had like a broad category that was machining tasks. So now there's setup specific and there's checklist template specifics, because I was finding myself searching through that machining category a lot because there's a lot of stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, mitigate searching again, just little
That's
things.
awesome.
Updated the layout on our job board to better reflect our workflow.
Oh, cool.
So not to be too detail oriented, but just so it makes some sense, we just have kind of like all of these vertical dividers that are for each step in our process.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to not have, we only had one whiteboard. Now we have two, so we have more space. So I condensed. Initially I had programming and like programmed with all the setup notes in Airtable as two separate categories.
Okay.
And I was like, this is really one task. Like, to me, the programmer, it's two separate things. But in terms of like visibility in the shop, doesn't help anyone else in the shop to know that it's programmed if they can't do anything with it.
Interesting.
Combined that into one. And then I added a category. We used to like, once a part was done, it would go, the actual physical tag would go over to the shipping station. And be either like this was shipped to Anodize or this shipped to the customer. And then it would end up back to me to get invoiced. And now we just have like a shipping to Anodize, at Anodize.
Oh, nice.
Ship to customer. And if it skips Anodize, it just goes straight to the customer so
Yeah.
that the tags aren't having to move around.
Okay.
And it reflects our actual workflow.
Very cool. Do you have an invoiced one on there, or?
No, basically once it gets shipped, it gets brought to my desk, and then
Gotcha.
I just handle the invoicing.
Why do you handle the invoicing?
That's a good question.
That feels like something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't have a great answer for that. Caught red-handed.
History, that's why.
Yeah.
Inertia.
Yeah. I mean, partially just like everyone else in the shop is pretty well loaded at this point.
Yeah.
But that's a good question.
I actually, I think hired a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
We're going to kick off on Thursday.
Uh-huh.
But she also does like accounts payable, accounts receivable work.
Interesting. Huh.
So I don't know. I was just sort of thinking like it is not, I'm not speaking for you, but speaking for me, there's a lot of these tasks that I'm not actually that good at. Like I'm just not. I'm like pretty dyslexic and whatnot. And then also, it's just like not the best use of my time.
Yeah.
And like the cost isn't high.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So
our invoicing is pretty streamlined. I'm not trying to let myself off the hook.
Sure. So it's like a few clicks of a button kind of thing.
A few clicks.
Yeah.
But it does take time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll think about that. Designed and test printed a new tool tag design.
Oh yeah, I saw that. You posted about it on Instagram.
Yeah, so our old ones were breaking
Mm-hmm.
because the like feature they engage with on tool holders varies from manufacturer to manufacturer.
That's odd.
Yeah. Well, it's like it defines a taper,
Right. And then on the machine, the thing that engages that is just spring loaded, so it doesn't matter.
And it's circular.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Cool.
it doesn't matter. Anyway, they were breaking because some of them were really, really tight and some of them were super loose, and the tight ones would cause them to fatigue and crack. And
Okay.
Then they didn't stick on the.
Interesting.
They were useless. So this one is magnetic retention.
Oh, cool.
And we were already putting magnets in there, so then we're just making the magnets do 2 jobs instead of 1.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And is it an issue to magnetize them and then like chips stick to the tool holders? Or
Someone brought that up after I posted it. I don't anticipate it being an issue, but time will tell, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We're trying to learn problems on tools.
Yeah.
Quorum came up with a quick, better way to search for a restart within a program for starting a program midstream.
Okay.
Which was, again, very very obvious. So many of these things are so obvious after the fact. I had just been doing it the way they showed me to do it when I first got my machine.
Okay.
Which was like go into edit mode, search for your tool number, find your line, write it down on a whiteboard, go back into memory mode, go to your whatever start sequence thing, put in your number, blah, blah, blah. Coram walks over to me and he was like, did you know that you can search on the desktop? You've already downloaded the program. And I was like, oh.
So you just like open it up on the desktop, do your search there.
Yeah, and the search tools are way better.
Right. And you have a full keyboard instead of whatever that mess is on the CNC.
Yeah, and instead of having to like look at it, write it down, then go back and then and look what you wrote down, you just like
type.
Just type. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that was cool.
Why do you restart in the middle of a program?
We, on longer runs, we often do it for the last part for not running the air cutting for the first op.
Gotcha.
And then during setup, if there's any kind of issues and we're having to make program tweaks, we'll often start where we left off.
Interesting. I wonder if you could, what if you made you could do a manual NC. Okay, this is pretty annoying. There's send a message for where you're going to restart if that's a thing you do with every program.
We don't do it with every program.
No,
well, we do that is a good idea actually for op 2. We should do that.
And then you just search for that, or I wonder if there's a way that you could.
No, that's a great idea for op 2. Yeah, we should make that happen. I need to make a note. I already said this. Paper towel holders at every machine, and then I updated some of my mill setup checklist template for just better readability and reduced typing. So I was finding myself like, I have a bunch of things that are like yes, no.
Okay.
And instead of, but I would often delete the N and then write in a full yes or delete. And so I just wrote out the whole thing and I just delete what I don't want.
I'm not quite following that.
It's like a toggle option. Like, does this use a trunnion?
Okay.
Does this go on this machine? Yes, no kind of things. And so I have it written out as a prompt for myself and I just fully wrote it out instead of.
Does this go out on a machine? And then you just fully typed out yes, no, and now you just go delete whichever one.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I think that's what there was a few different things that I changed, but
interesting.
Just generally trying to refine that to be faster and easier to use.
I was just thinking about that. I forget. Anyway. Yeah, I was just thinking about like what things, like Saunders made that video a long time ago about like building template toolpaths. Like built into the program, and then just because it's so quick to delete stuff, and I feel like I need to do more of that.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome,
cool.
Well, I gotta go pick up my kid.
Nice.
So let's wrap it up.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, you can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram and austeremfg.com.
You can find me at Lycan_MFG on Instagram and LycanPrecision.com, and the pod at Incremental CI on Instagram and Spotify, obviously. That's probably where you're listening to this. And we have a Patreon.
We do.
Check it out.
The link should be in the description, but someone said it isn't, so we should check on that.
Oh, interesting.
Also, problems are jewels, so
go
find some
jewels.
problems and solve them.
Have a good one.